It says we are live. Hopefully you guys can hear me out there. Peace to you good peoples out there. Hope you've been good to yourself. Best you can be. We out here on this Tuesday getting started, and I'm not sure if everything is set up because it's been a little while since I've been on this thing live. HiiiScholar here. Today I'm going to be talking about the second installment of Ali Siddiq's Don't Judge a Book by Its Cover comedy series that he's put out, I think, 3 installments of. I'm going to focus on the second installment. But before we get too much into it, thank y'all for coming in and listening tonight. I'm going to go ahead and punch this clock and try to make this a more regular thing, especially here on Tuesday. Try to do a live show a week and a pre-recorded show a week. Live show will be a destination unknown where we'll start at a certain place that I prepared and let it just go where it may based on your engagement and your questions. And the pre-recorded show will be something hopefully that'll be a little more packaged, maybe something more related to a lecture, academic, or educational topic. Maybe not, but we'll see where it goes. We're still growing this thing, and it's going to grow and change, not only how I would like it to go, but also in response to some of the things that you want to hear. But let's go ahead and dive in. I'm not going to hold you all long as we start this evening. I look for this to be a relatively straightforward show. I had opportunity to really sit back and enjoy Ali Siddiq as a comedian. He's one of my favorite comedians, just giving full transparency about his work. I came across him before I got in contact with the 85 South show, and hearing his story is in itself something that's powerful, but particularly when I was watching this, and I tried to watch this for my enjoyment, but as a thinker, as a person who studies culture, and a psychologist, it's really difficult to hear something so powerful from a person like Ali Siddiq. I hear him reflect on his experiences as a black boy coming into manhood, and he uses comedy to really address some really serious topics, particularly around loss, particularly around how his loss shapes his experience, feeds into him becoming a street pharmaceutical representative, which is very frowned upon, as he says, and how it really leads him on the path to serving this kind of 6-year prison sentence that we now face. We now get him as a comedian, and this comedic career has seen highs that almost, he really talks about how this loss in this second installment really feeds into him being this great comedian, even in this underground circuit. I really got inspired to do this response to Ali Siddiq's comedy series, primarily because I thought it was masterful. It was masterful in using comedy to reflect upon experiences that oftentimes would go overlooked, wouldn't be heard, especially around attachments. Attachments is how we talk about them psychologically and as psychologists, but these are relationships that really shape black boys' lives into the men that they will become, the men that we know, for good, bad, or indifferent. And he really lays it all out there for us to really see black boys in a more humane way around who they're trying to attach to. When I teach about motivation in my college courses or in other places, I start with the conversation of attachment. I start with that conversation because as psychologists, we believe, those who study motivation particularly, that your most basic desire, your most basic pull is that desire to attach. And one of the things that we have to navigate with that basic desire to attach is how we deal with detaching. And that's what Ali Siddiq is really trying to really give us a different narrative and a different view around, because he's always he's talking through these different scenarios. I'm going to talk about 3 in this conversation particularly, but he gives 3 significant losses or detachments that really, shaped his path and trajectory in a way that he did not foresee. And that's one of those things that it was really powerful for me, and I want to make sure I share that with you all. Thank you for all who are out here listening. Again, tonight we're talking about Ali Siddiq's Loss, which is the second installment of a comedy series that he does on stage, Don't Judge a Book by Its Cover. And in this comedy set, he really reviews 3, like I said before, detachments First attachment, he talks about losing his high school girlfriend to an unexpected move. Second loss, he talks about the loss of his baby sister to an unexpected illness. And third, he talks about losing his own freedom in a drug deal that he knew was a setup. Like, he had the inkling of the setup, and nobody around him would listen. So throughout the course of this conversation, and I'll be responding to questions, I'm appreciating anybody who's listening. I'm going to try to go through each of these situations and talk about how his story is a good reflection, a good, what we like to call in academia, archetype. Like, he's not telling a story that is unfamiliar to a lot of us. It's a story that we oftentimes as Black boys can't tell the full trajectory or the steps along the path that got us there. And he's actually articulate in a particular way, because he's using comedy to tell, to be honest, like, I fought tears the entire time. And as soon as I would feel the inkling of tears about to, stream down my face, I'm busting out laughing, because he's that kind of comedian. So he takes you on this kind of roller coaster ride between these stories of attaching and then the eventual, which is all about detaching, and how that really, like, he deals with the pain of it even on stage in his performance. And that's what makes it very difficult. So when we're talking about the first loss that we're going to talk about is the loss of his high school girlfriend. And in the prior Don't Judge a Book by its cover, he talks about his life in other comedy shows. He talks about his life and how he navigates, co-parenting. He has two parents who have a relatively cordial relationship, and he goes back and forth between his mother's house, who seems more stable, than his father's house, who is still kind of a pseudo bachelor. He's he's a father, but he doesn't have children who live with him. So now he's back with mom, who lives in a better neighborhood because of her education and all these dynamics. And he's going to a high school that is not like the high school he just left. And he's kind of taking a step away from being a street pharmaceutical rep because he's made enough money. And what really happens in this situation is he gets introduced to what he would perceive as a girlfriend from a good home. And he tells the story. And for me, as a middle school, high school teacher, I've taught it, 6th through college. But, this story particularly struck me because I could see the young boy who he has now found an attachment. Yes, it's young. We in our community call it puppy love. And we who are scaffolding adolescents through that puppy love phase will oftentimes talk about how it is so beneficial for, the boy or the girl to be experiencing this, because they now have something to bring them to school and to try a little harder. And he describes her as that, in that way, that she really shifted him, and is the only reason why he's really going to school on this straight and narrow path, away from the street pharmaceutical rep that he was on before. The abruptness of, having to deal with her family splitting up. That's what the situation became. Her family went through a divorce that threw him off his trajectory. It was unexpected, detachment, unexpected loss of a person that was of significance to I believe he was 15 at the time. He was a sophomore in high school. It throws everything in the haywire. It seemed like a waterfall of bad events, because while he's dealing with the loss of his unexpected loss of his girlfriend in high school, he's also losing his job. That was a good cover for the money he had gained from being a pharmaceutical rep. He talked about some of the details that we don't get from Black boys when it comes to dealing with loss. So the feeling of her absence in the hallway, the feeling on the phone from her cousin, hearing about how she's not here and there's nothing we can do about it. And what really struck me is there was a flat response from those who really he relied on for that emotional support the most. And he made light of it. I don't want to, disrespect anybody involved in the story, because for Ali Siddiq, this story is very personal. But it struck me because for many Black boys, when we're confronted with these, emotional situations that we have to, navigate our own emotions and what is happening in our lives around our attachments, to toughen us up, or to make sure that we are somehow, we can somehow move forward. you will sometimes see a flattening or a banal response, a response that you wouldn't give to someone that you want to offer more emotional support. And in that situation, it got a belly laugh for me, because it was kind of like, oh, that's what you're dealing with? Your dad left me with you, you know what I'm saying? And other kid and your sister, and I got more things to deal with than the loss of your girlfriend. And those two words, she gone, is something that really resonated with me, because it kind of spoke to that. He knew what the response was probably going to be. Even though she still came and sat with him, she didn't really have the words, the language to really engage him as a Black boy dealing with the unexpected loss of a girlfriend, and just because she just moved away. And he talked about how that made him return back to being a street pharmaceutical rep in a way that he probably wouldn't have, maybe if she had stayed and they graduated high school, because they were so in that kind of puppy love phase. All right, moving forward, we're going to talk about our second loss. Remember, I said the second loss that he discusses is the unexpected loss of his baby sister. And this was probably one of the toughest parts of the comedy special to really deal with, because we're talking about he himself. He still, these stories seem to happen in it seemed like years in the stories, but he's only about 15 or 16 in much of the story, because he's trying to really build up this idea of how these losses snowball and spiral into the losses of these other losses. And it seemed like it was, a domino effect of losses, and that's really, he calls it domino effect as well. So it has multiple kind of titles for what he's describing, and I understand why, because of what he's addressing. So in the second loss, Ali Siddiq is now back to being a street pharmaceutical rep. Again, very frowned upon. He's lost his bagger job. He's lost his girlfriend. And now he's back to being the rep in the way that, he even describes it, saying, I was pre-Nino Brown. So if you know about Nino Brown and all the flashiness that, and bravado, he was saying, I was that before that was even a thing, which lets you know that it was really grandiose. When I went to a high school that was, very hype, historically Black high school, that I can only imagine seeing a local pharmaceutical rep with a mink coat and a southern heat. He's from Texas, I'm from the South myself. So, seeing that in the heat is like, yes, you are going to prison, because we know what's going on. And while he's living this kind of throwing $500 at a Friday football game and a grandiose lifestyle of a street pharmaceutical rep who's 15 or 16 years old, he's also dealing with the declining health of his baby sister. And he remembers and recounts just, special experiences where he would take a step away from this lifestyle that he's living to spend time with her. And having that time with her seemed like, a step away from all this craziness that's going on in his life. And as much as he can connect with her, she now deals with an unexpected illness, to the point where he has to call mom back because he actually sees her life pass away. And this is one of the hardest parts of the show, because this is something that you can tell was really tragic for everyone who was involved. There's a clip where he shoots to his sister who, she even says, like, it seems like she was okay, and then that she wasn't. And that level of unexpected loss, who talked to him, who engaged him to make sure he was okay, and who didn't. And a lot of times when you start dealing with the loss of the girlfriend, and then you have this loss of a sibling, who's going to stop the snowball? Who's going to intercede, and who can really reach a young Black boy who, like Ali Siddiq, who may need some real covering, who may need some real support, and that may need to be there before these tragedies happen. I believe these tragedies are not something that we can intercede on all the time, but differently than other people, Black boys don't always have the intrinsic support systems that understand them as human beings who are dealing with tragedy. So in many ways, I felt like he was still on the stage dealing with the loss of his sister in a way that no one has helped me, no one wanted to address it at the time. I've had to figure this out on my own. I've had to figure out what it means for her to pass away, how it has affected me, and how it affected my immediate path. And the only way that I was able to save myself from that path which led me to prison, was to understand how her loss really affected my life. Yeah, that was a tough one. It's tough to even try to recount that story, because again, Ali goes in when it comes to Black boys and the losses that we go through in a particular mid to late adolescence, that we are quite, to some degree, we become quiet about it because, people give us the flat response. If we try to say this is the reason why, we may be told to shut up or just move on, you'll be okay. And who tells you how to deal with the loss of an intimate partner, your first intimate partner, perhaps, because her parents moved away and there was no word from her. Never got a chance to get a phone call or explanation. She's just gone. And then months later, you deal with the loss of a sibling in a way that is unexpected. And again, you don't have the relevant support to help you cope with this, tragedy in your life, neither at home nor at school or in the community. And here we are faced with the final loss, which I detailed as the loss of his freedom. And I got to say that, he has other losses that are going on within the comedy special. He masterfully kind of layers losses on losses. I try to pick out what I thought were the big losses that he really hung the comedy special on. But if you go and enjoy it, and I would advise you to do that, please go and support Ali Siddiq's comedy special. I just wanted to do a conversation about it because it was so good. I felt like it deserved that. It deserved a scholarly or academic kind of breakdown that could talk about attachment and relationships for Black boys and how they don't necessarily get their support to cope and be resilient whenever, we attach and detach. And you have to make sure that as you are raising children from childhood into boyhood into manhood, that they can understand that this is going to be a part of it and need the support to cope with these type of things. So in the final loss that he discusses in the comedy special, he really discusses the loss of his freedom. And in the loss of his freedom, he talks about, this is supposed to be his absolute last drug deal. And he's in this drug deal. He's a street pharmaceutical rep, very frowned upon. And literally because it's right behind the story of the loss of his sister, it seems like he's still dealing with the grief as he's telling the story. He's in the situation of setting up this final deal. Hey, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. This is my last one because I'm still dealing with the grief of my sister. I don't really need the money, the hassle, any of this anymore. He thought he was back with the old crew. However, the old crew now has a few new characters. And even that, he felt all of the indicators of this is going to go bad. And I don't need to do this. But if you've ever been a mid to late adolescent Black boy, you're overwhelmed with so many different messages and things going on that I could tell in how he's telling the story. It just seemed like, let me just get this over with so I can move forward. I already said this is my last situation. I'm dealing with the grief of the loss of my sister. How can I now just cut my losses with this situation and move forward? And the level of detail that Ali Siddiq remembers of his arrest tells you the level in which that all these things are happening to him in what seems like a whirlwind. It seemed like a never-ending story that no one grabbed onto his hand to be an anchor for him during this time of late adolescence. No one was able to, really reach him in a way that you don't have to spiral from one thing to another because you're dealing with what feels like internal turmoil that's related to detaching from, a love interest and detaching from a sibling who's no longer in the physical world. So he remembers being drugged through, being chased by the feds, and how he knew it was a setup, and even at the end, knowing the guy who was going to be really the fall guy and hearing how they got each of the members of the crew who was involved in the ordeal. So he really, talked about the loss of his freedom, not only affecting him, but those others around him, particularly his mother. In between laughing and crying during this whole comedy series, he really ends it with the kind of overarching loss. He lost his mother, in this situation. He feels like lost his older sister to the army, his baby sister to illness, and he lost his freedom. So she also lost her son. This all happened within the year. So like I said, he was about 15. He discussed 15 or 16. He talks about this mainly for me was about his losses, but he was even to extend it to, losses of his mother that he was not able to explain or even, have a conversation with her, as a free man about. And in many ways, it felt to me like it was like a Russian doll of detachment, a Russian doll of loss that, while the jokes kept coming, the losses kept coming. And it was really just a masterful narrativizing of what Black boys are experiencing from ages 14 to 18, 13 to 18, that when you see that man hardened or, he seems very jovial on the surface. If you would have told me that this is, his experience, this is the losses that he's experienced, I could have never imagined from his comedy. But this is in many ways where a lot of Black men come from. A lot of the Black men who are able to stand as erect as possible. This is a lot of the stuff that is, beneath our veil, and we need to be understanding of, how we need to support Black boys who are dealing with these same kind of losses. These losses have not stopped. However, the coping mechanisms, the resilience, the supports that the Black boys need are still not there. When they go through these things, they feel like they have to recluse because to open up will lead to me to dealing with the kind of flat, okay, well, if you need anything, let me know. What do you expect to happen? Well, this happens to everybody. These are some of the responses that sometimes the Black boy will hear that you thought you would hear something different. You thought, people thought of you as a human being who was dealing with, human conditions, and in many ways you are not. So this comedy special for me, not only is a masterful display of comedy, but really talks about Black teenagerhood as a boy in a way that's often overshadowed, overlooked, and we disconnect from those outcomes. So whenever we see the hardened Black man who doesn't want to share, who feels like people do not care and that he has to really look out for himself, go his own way, or whatever you want to claim it to be, this is the reason for that. Like he talked about stepping away from a lifestyle to be in love or to, find this kind of intimate partner, intimate, situation. And as fast as he fell into it, it was swept from under him. If you want to make the, baby sister kind of the one moral turpitude that you can, hang your hat on as well. Like, I don't do bad things because I have a baby sister. As much as you can connect to that, she's now gone. So it just seemed like, for Black men, this is something that is familiar. This is something that is familiar, and we need more of this. We need more of this in the creative art of whatever you're doing, where you can not, he didn't do it in a way that I felt like I left this feeling like I feel worse about myself or worse about him. It still was a comedy. You still be able to enjoy it as a comedy, but hopefully you also take from it that this was a real story, and a real story that's archetypal for Black boys until these communities are fixed. These Black boys need more support around their emotions, around attaching, being in relationships, kinships, friendships, all type of relationships that have that support for when they deal with loss, when they deal with detaching, whether it be from those love interests as well as from family members who pass on, people who move away. All these ways we have to detach. We have to make sure that we're supporting Black boys and Black men to navigate that, because historically, because of the conditions that we lived in here in America, we experienced the detachment and loss in a way that oftentimes others do not, whether it be our friends, love interests, you name it. We have a particular experience with loss that is not common here in America amongst all populations. So I'm around about 25 minutes. I didn't want this to be extremely long. My live shows, I really want to keep them anywhere between 25 and 35 minutes. Just a quick little lesson, quick little hit. Hopefully I didn't talk too fast or go too over your head too much. But if you like what I'm doing here, thank you for listening in. Follow me on Twitter at HiiiScholar, same way you see it spelled here on the screen. If you want to support me in other ways, hit like, hit subscribe, share the video. You also can hit me on Cash App at Dr. QB. That's DOCTORQB. Again, great comedy series here. I've seen 1 and 2, but tonight I discussed the second installment by Ali Siddiq entitled Lost, and really want to discuss how it relates to attachments experienced by Black boys and the detachments that they don't get support in coping with. So hopefully you guys found this rewarding. Hopefully you guys get a chance to enjoy yourself the rest of this week, and I'll talk to you guys as soon as I can. Peace, take it easy, and as always, I'm amazed but never surprised. Peace.